Let's bring in Anthony Chan, Chief Economist at Chase. You know, this has been great, obviously, to see these numbers. A lot of it's been healthcare stocks, though. But there's concerns now, Anthony, about this border adjustment tax, that it could still hit companies. If it's off the table, would this be actually a boost to some of these stocks?
It's absolutely a boost, because what the border adjustment tax was going to do is that it was going to serve as a negative hit of about 8 or 9% to corporate profits. The fact that it's off the table, the president is not a supporter, and of course Speaker Ryan did not really talk about it last week when he talked about tax reform, does suggest that it's off the table, and that's a boost to overall corporate profits, and that's the reason why the equity market likes it. In Europe this morning, they're celebrating the fact that they just got a business confidence index that was higher than expected, suggesting that the growth in Europe continues.
Okay, and the growth here in the U.S. Might be stalled if the Federal Reserve raises interest rates too fast. Do you think they're still on pace with 3 rate hikes this year and then 3 next?
I don't think they're on pace for 3 this year and 3 next year. I think that we'll get another one this year, but I think that next year, given the fact that there is some concern, not necessarily about growth, but about inflation, that we only get 2 rate hikes next year. This week on Friday, we get a very important number, and that's core personal consumption deflator. We know that's running at 1.5%, which is below the 2% target, but there is a risk that that number can slip between now and the end of the year slightly, and that is the reason why I think, on top of the unwinding of the balance sheet, that the Federal Reserve only goes twice next year instead of 3.
But what does that, Anthony, what does that mean exactly?
Well, remember that if you start unwinding the balance sheet, it's $4.4 trillion. It started out at $800 billion before the global financial crisis. Right. That automatically is somewhat contractionary. So that means that if inflation is not taking off, and it isn't, right, there is no need for the Federal Reserve to be as aggressive, because then we get into the risk that you've just described.
How do you feel about healthcare stocks? Really strong performance last week, this month, this year, as we look at the GOP Senate repeal and replace of Obamacare?
I love healthcare stocks. Some of them have actually lagged, and all of a sudden you're not getting as much negative discussions about pricing and things like that out of Washington. The fact that eventually there is the prospects of healthcare reform that's not that unfriendly to many of these healthcare stocks, all these things are positive. Of course, it's going to be a nail-biter between now and the end of the month, but these things are give me some cautious optimism.
Yeah, well, cautious optimism. I think that's how a lot of people are feeling after 5 weeks of gain in that sector. Anthony Chan. Anthony, thank you for being here this morning.
Pleasure.